everyone. Welcome back to a new interview nickname that I've created called the Round Table. And it's been a while since we've last done this, years and years. But I thought since this has been going so well with currently reviewing Space Ghost and other things, I would decide that, okay, I would talk to the man himself who's responsible for bringing not only classic Hanna-Barbera characters back, but also his own original creations and a bunch of other goodies that he's got coming down the pipeline. And that is today's guest, David Prepose. How are you, David?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you for being on here again. So this is technically take two because the last time we talked, unfortunately, there were technical issues on my end, but I got a lot of insight into David as a person. And if you guys aren't reading his stuff, please go and check it out. He's been working at a bunch of different publishers throughout the years. Marvel Comics, Dynamite, Mad Cave, and the list goes on, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But thank you again for being here. And also, too, I just want to say congratulations. Since the last time we talked, you were hiding a big one from me, Captain Planet.
Yeah.
You've been promoting that, and that's something I want to get to. But
Sure.
also, congratulations on your cable run. It's been great so
Thank you.
far.
Thank you so much for reading. I appreciate it.
No,
It's been a fun book.
yes, absolutely. Well, I actually think it's probably best to start off on that because I think a lot of people should be reading your cable run because you talked to me last time about it, and you had a great reinvention for cable that has kind of kept him from, I would say, coming back into mainstream popularity.
Mhm.
At least with his characters. So, can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. Well, Cable's been a fun book in that, he is this character that has an interesting staying power in that he's so representative
Yes.
of a time in the '90s of like the X-Men's greatest heyday.
Yes.
And so he is very much kind of rooted in this particular mode and tone of storytelling. And um, my editor Tom Brevoort knows that I am a child of the '90s, and so
Yes, as am I.
um, he really challenged me to kind of take a different angle on cable when he approached me saying like we would like to do like a time travel romance story with cable.
Yes.
And for me, I think the best kind of collaborations is where you have a little bit of that back and forth. And so
Yes.
I had said to Tom, Cable's had a lot of long-standing love interest with Domino and Esme Cuckoo and the original Hope from Dwayne Swarzynski's run. And so how do we justify knowing that it's going to be a 5-issue miniseries? How do we justify this new love interest? And the idea of her, leaning into the fact that this is a short timer, that when my wife was asking me about who Cable was, what's his deal, the techno-organic virus was really the thing that stood out the most to me
Yes.
as his own singular, unique thing. There's other time travelers, other telepaths,
Mm.
other gun guys in the X-Men. And so the techno-organic virus, though, it really struck me as a nice parallel to like people with chronic, terminal, lifelong conditions,
Yes.
cancer, ALS, leukemia, Crohn's, anything, whether it'll end your life or not, as long as it's something that you have to live with day by day. That's something that really humanizes Cable to me and really explains his kind of larger than life attitude. Is that of course you want to project strength if you want to if you want to convince yourself that you'll be able to survive till tomorrow, this
Yes.
time traveler on borrowed time. So, giving Cable a love interest who has the same condition as him, I thought was a nice way of being able to explore that,
Yes.
sort of like Edge of Tomorrow meets The Fault in Our Stars. So, yeah, I'm really pleased with the response to that book. Especially when you're going a little off the beaten path against the grain,
Yes.
like with a time travel romance story
Yes.
with
Exactly.
Cable. You never know how that's going to be responded to, but
No.
I think the fact that I think people seem to understand the themes that we're going for here, and that we're able to kind of have our cake and eat it too. That we're not skimping on any of the larger than life pyrotechnics that you
Yes.
need in the Cable story,
Yeah.
but it is we're able to kind of peel some of the layers back a little bit and really get to have some personal stakes, some personal vulnerability, and have Cable really get to explore what does that mean if you're somebody living with this virus, and what
Yes.
does it mean to find connection in something that has really defined who you are for your whole life and has sort of been this kind of specter over your life.
Yes.
So it's been a fun book, and it's really allowed me to explore some different kind of emotional territory than I've been
Yeah.
able to explore before. Sometimes it's a little solemn, but I think it's uh, it allows this book to actually be about something.
Yes.
That's particularly heartening as a writer.
Oh yes, absolutely, and it does help too that I think your book came out at the right time because Cable recently made a re-emergence in the '97 revival of X-Men, and
Yeah,
since both of us were child of the '90s, I would imagine that's where we were exposed to him the most, and since he is a product of that decade, like you said, there's always been uh, a conflict where what do you do with this character? And I feel like giving him a love interest that has the same deal that he's going through, I feel like that's better because I feel like Cable's a more interesting character when you're really putting something in front of him, a conflict that he can relate to, or just
yeah,
showing what it is like being kind of this John Connor figurehead of his
sure.
time.
Yeah, I grew up, I was reading like Fatal Attractions, and I was reading Adventures of Cyclops and Phoenix, and so I think those are kind of the central texts for me that kind of stand out the most for Cable. I think doing a purely stoic character is very challenging.
Yes.
It doesn't give you a whole lot of maneuverability in terms of emotions and voice, and so having, and having written a very stoic character in Punisher,
Yes.
the first challenge I had was like, how do we kind of separate the voices a little bit?
Yes.
And so I think giving Cable a little bit of a warmth, a little bit of I've seen it all kind of sense of humor,
Yes.
and then kind of leaning into that flirty banter back and forth. Yeah, it's a very different kind of Cable story, but I'm really thrilled to see that people seem to be responding to it.
Yes, absolutely, and I'm very excited to see where issues 4 and 5 go. And I really hope that if there's opportunity, I'm going to be saying this a lot, but if there's an opportunity to come back and expand, I would very much like to see what you could do for Cable.
Sure, never say never. Right,
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. Um so okay, moving on, so kind of just catapulting to Space Ghost now. So okay, the last time we talked there were teases and we're in the end game now. Essentially. We're about to hit issue 12 in this upcoming April, and you did say on Twitter that we there will be an annual to kind of tie everything in a nice little bow. Can you talk about what these past issues of Space Ghost have been like for you now that knowing
Yeah.
that it's the end of, I guess we'll call it this first arc?
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly, it's not, it's funny. When this was sort of we're reaching toward the end of what my initial pitch
Yes.
was for the book, but thankfully, thanks to the response for that first year, we've got some more stories coming. And so we've already started to plant some of the seeds for that in
Really?
some of these
Okay.
issues that it'll all make sense as everything kind of unfurls.
Okay.
But yeah, I Space Ghost is a book that's really surprised me in a lot of ways, in the
Really?
best kind of ways.
Okay.
Um, just because I never expected it to get this kind of following, and
Yeah, no.
it's a character that not a lot of people know, and a
This is
lot of
true.
people who do know him from coast to coast.
Yes.
The very different kind of tone and mode of storytelling. But the fact that like people have really rallied around this book,
Yes.
I think it speaks to people like superhero stories. I don't think there's any sort of superhero fatigue. I mean, we all just spent
No.
5 hours looking at the Avengers chairs this week. Um,
Exactly.
but I think people are looking to be surprised, and I think
Yes.
I think a challenge writing at Marvel, and I'm sure it's the case at DC, is that
Yes.
when they've been so thoroughly mined, how do you make things still feel new? How do
It,
you find a fresh take on these things? And especially, the readers are so well versed in
Yes.
all the minutia and the continuity that
Yes.
it becomes sort of an exercise in trying to anticipate the story rather than being present for it.
Right.
And so I think something like Space Ghost, where the readership isn't as familiar with the universe, or they
Yeah.
only know kind of half remember it, or
Yes.
they're they've got like, oh, I know who Creature King is, but like there's a lot of room for reinterpretation.
Yes.
I think that has uh it's a lot of advantages for me as a writer in
Yes.
that it means that I have a lot of freedom, first off, to, I don't have to share my characters with anybody else,
Yes,
but
this is
also
correct.
I get to, I get to add little twists and turns to these pre-existing characters, and
Yes.
it makes them feel, I think, a little bit more surprising and hopefully exciting. So yeah, but it's been, a fun challenge. And granted, I wrote these things a few months ago, but it was sort of, we're introducing all these villains individually, and now we're
Yes.
sort of having them all as the big jam band in the Council of Doom. And yeah, I think our first part of the three-parter has come out, and I believe part two
Yeah.
comes out later in April.
Yes.
But and then our third part, which is kind of without spoiling too much, I
Yes.
do think we kind of hit the Council of Doom in a number of different fun angles.
Yes.
And sort of they're, what are they like as like this kind of quasi team
Yeah.
versus how does Space Ghost and the twins work as a well-oiled machine, or maybe
Yes.
less so, now that you've seen what's going on in issue 11.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
um, so yeah, I think yeah, I'm really thrilled with the response to Space Ghost, and I think yeah, it's been a real gift as a storyteller to
Yeah.
be able to have this kind of freedom and to be able to really follow my instincts. And so Dynamite and Warner Brothers have been wonderful
That's
partners
good.
to work with on the licensing front and all that. And Jonathan Lau has been as amazing of a collaborator as one could ask.
Yes. I
So
think Jonathan's art and your writing are really what holds this series together because Jonathan's art kind of invokes what I always imagined Space Ghost would look like if he were in a sort of Frank Miller
yeah,
style, but at the same time, it's not trying to take itself too seriously because that's the beauty of what makes, in my opinion, I think Space Ghost is probably the best underground hit because it doesn't take itself too seriously. It still loves where its inspiration came from, and that does come from the '60s cartoon, which back then Hanna-Barbera was just experimenting with different things and what was new and hip at the time, and
mhm,
Space Ghost has that. So I've always been of the opinion that if you're going to do a serious take on something, don't be afraid to lean in and respect the kind of cheesy silliness that it came from because
sure.
people are kind of tired of a lot of dark and gritty stories because the world is a dark and gritty place, and we need something that kind of lets us smile throughout the day. And I feel like that's Space Ghost.
Yeah, I think finding, I think leaning into the emotion of it all,
Yeah,
I think is the heart of it. It is very easy just to lean into like it's a dark gritty reboot, and that's not what I wanted for Space Ghost at all.
yes,
I think it's just taking, showing respect to the original property, and then
yes,
just taking the core of what was there in the 60s, and just applying tools from 2025.
yes,
And then,
exactly.
so,
Did it
um,
did it
yeah.
surprise you? So we talked about this the last time, but I feel like I didn't ask you to my recollection. But did it surprise you when issue one, around this time coming up in May, sold out and Dynamite Entertainment had to keep getting not getting Dynamite Entertainment had to do a reprint of multiple copies? Was that like your indication of, okay, I think I've hit a chord with people. I think that now um I feel happy and confident that they love this. Like,
It took a little while to feel, I was thrilled with the response to the first issue, but
yeah.
it was always sort of a question of, is that a one-off? You want to make sure
Yes.
it, and I've been trying really hard to write this book as consistently as one can.
Oh, I can
Um,
imagine.
and so I think it was around like issue like 5 or 6
Yes.
that I think people started to realize like, okay, like they're not going away.
No.
And I think we sort of hit a second wave of that around
Right.
when 10 came out. Is that people were like, okay, it's 10 issues, and we feel and all 10 of them had been well received.
Right.
And so I it has been a lesson to me in that, especially if you're working outside of the big two,
Yes.
or maybe a handful of other, like turtles or something.
Oh, yeah.
But I think, when you're working on lesser known properties, I think there's a degree of trust that needs to be built, and it takes a while to do that.
Yes.
On my end, when I'm trying to promote things from an announcement, which is usually months before the first issue comes out, and then working my way up to final word or cutoff to promote things, it's it's always surprising to me that even that you can be as loud as you want, that there are
Yes.
some people who they will not learn that your book has come out until 3 months after it's come out.
It's true.
um,
Yes.
and that's fine. Like, I think that's the beauty of doing monthlies, is that you build that runway. So if people today still are just like, oh, there's a new Space Ghost comic, and it's like, that's totally fine. You've got plenty that you can catch up on now. You got a whole first trade, and we'll have a second trade,
Exactly. Yes.
later in the year, I think. But
Yes, and hardcover too. So, because your
yeah,
first trade is not only available on paperback, but it's also in hardcover too.
yes.
So
And so yeah, I do think that there's a degree of, at least in the most vocal elements of fandom, of
yes.
it's sort of this, I think there is a degree of some subsection of people are waiting for you to fail. And so if you can kind of hold the course
Hmm.
long enough for people to say like, okay, like I think there was a plan here, and I think that
Yes.
they stuck the landing with it. Like, so yeah, like I don't want to sit on my rest of my laurels. Like, I
No,
think,
no.
but I do think it's been a really heartening experience. And it's
Yes.
one that I think has really, been a highlight in my career, just to see that this book, this concept that was underestimated. And
Yes.
I think it's very easy, unless you're like the A list of the A list. It's easy to get overlooked as a
Oh,
creator.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, so yeah, I'm really, like, Space Ghost has certainly opened the doors for me for a lot of other amazing opportunities with Captain
Yes.
Planet and Speed Racer, and more stuff down the pipeline. So yeah, I but it took a little while for me to trust it too.
Absolutely.
So
Well, I do want to say I don't know. So during the time we talked about this, which again I don't know if we touched on this, but your space, I believe your Space Ghost comic has done such a good job that now, and I'm curious to know what your thoughts on it because you're not the writer of it. But Space Ghost is now going to be teaming up with Johnny Quest. In its own miniseries, and I believe that because of the success of your comic, that now Space Ghost has an opportunity to branch out. What are your thoughts on that? On Space Ghost now
yeah,
being involved in crossovers with other Hanna-Barbera characters?
yeah,
In
I think it feels like a perfectly natural
yeah,
thing to have happen. And I know, Dynamite's done similarly. They've got a Thundercats Powerpuff Girls. Yeah.
yes,
Um,
that I'm looking
so
forward to.
it makes sense. These two Alex Toth creations, and I know
Yeah.
John Casey is a big fan of Space Ghost. So yeah, yeah, like and I think it's a nice way to show like a diversity of tone and style.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've been lucky enough that I've been able to read. I think I've read up to issue 3
Oh
of
wow.
Joe's, 3 or 4, of Joe's mini, and I've seen the artwork for issue 1, Sebastian
Yeah.
Perez. No, issues 1 and 2.
Oh wow.
Sebastian Perez has done such a beautiful job on that.
Yes.
And yeah, for me, like I've read everything over, just that it doesn't contradict anything that we're
Yes,
doing.
because that is what
But
I was going to ask you for clarification. Would you say that this Space Ghost that is crossing over with Joe's Johnny Quest, is it your Space Ghost or is it just To I don't want to pull a Greg Wiseman here. Is it adjacent?
Oh, I'll say that's up to Dynamite.
That's fair.
I shouldn't be the one to weigh in, but I believe, if I unless I'm mistaken, I do believe that it at least is supposed to be like they're not contradicting each other.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so, uh, but it's definitely Joe's been writing, I think, in a more classic vein.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I think it's a really fun book, and I think it just shows the versatility of a character like Space Ghost in that,
Absolutely.
as the sci-fi Batman kind of character. There's
Yes.
there's a lot of different places that he can be in that it all feels organic, that it all feels.
Yes, Space Ghost very much like Batman is or Scooby Doo. They're very much like clay. They can be molded and shaped into whatever you want. So I do think that's good. But do you
Yeah.
see? Do you, if the opportunity presented itself, do you see your Space Ghost potentially crossing over with other Hanna Barbera characters?
Never say never. I've asked frequently about Herculoids and the Teen Force. And, I would love to do something in that vein, if the opportunity availed itself, and my band
Absolutely,
was open for it. But yeah, I think, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that could work. But also, like, I'm sure Dynamite and Warner Brothers have ideas in that regard,
oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, I would be interested, if not to be the one writing them, certainly to be the one reading them.
Absolutely, that's a great mindset. Well, okay, so since we're both children of the '90s, so this one you've been excited about, you've been promoting, and and very much like Space Ghost, it's now put the spotlight on you, and you announced 2 months ago.
Mhm.
February, if I'm correct, that after 30 years, Captain Planet is coming back to readers, and you are now the writer of that.
Yeah.
I know you've been promoting it in the press, and you've shown how excited you are. But please, just so everyone can understand, how did this happen? Like, how did you,
Uh,
as a fan of Captain Planet, get to step up to the plate?
well, yeah, I grew up watching Captain Planet, and for years I've been kind of pitching this book around to
Yeah.
various companies in the industry, because I do think Captain Planet has been ripe for a 21st century revival.
Yes.
It's inherently diverse and multicultural, and it tackles these very timely themes of
Yes.
environmental disaster and human greed that fuels it, and
Yes.
pop culture has really caught up to it, and that we're able to kind of inject pop culture strains of like X-Men and Avatar: The Last Airbender, and
Yes.
um, so yeah, I've thought for a long time, like, that was a book that was a concept that was so firmly rooted in the year 1990, and it felt like a no-brainer to me that why don't you take that core concept and just reimagine it for 2025? So, yeah, Dynamite announced at San Diego Comic-Con last year that they had gotten the rights to Captain Planet, and
Yes.
I was at the show, and so I flagged down our publisher Nick Barucci and my editor Joe Rybant, and I was just like, if nobody's on this book, like, I'm going to be, upset forever if I don't get to write it. And so, I've been working with Amon Casalos on this book, for a little while now, and
Yes.
he's fantastic. He's drawing issue 4 now as we speak.
Oh, wow.
Um, but yeah, it's been a really fun book to work on.
It looks
Uh,
like it.
just recontextualizing these 5 ordinary people from around the world who are
Yes.
suddenly given these 5 elemental rings, and they find themselves on the run from a corrupt billionaire that's looking to exploit them.
Yeah.
So it
So
feels a little timely in the year 2025.
no, yeah, and so I thought for the longest time, because again, this was before I had access to the internet, that I was the only fan of Captain Planet that I knew of.
Mhm.
But now, over 30 years later, this character. So you've mentioned this in the press, but Captain Planet feels like it's now more relevant now to tackle than ever because of what is currently going on in this climate. And the last thing to talk about this was I have no idea if you watched the OKKO crossover with Captain
Yeah,
Planet.
yeah,
Okay, but they briefly touched on how even though Captain Planet and the Planeteers were trying to sort of lead humanity into taking better care of the Earth, they did have to touch on that dark bit where their mission kind of failed, and they're just trying to pick up the pieces and keep everything as stitched together as possible. Did you have that similar mindset for writing Captain Planet now?
No.
No.
That's probably a little more cynical than I would want to
No,
do.
and you're
Um,
definitely not like
uh,
that.
well, it's just, when you're bringing back like kind of a long dormant property like Captain Planet,
Yeah.
you want to make sure that like uh, I think deconstruction works a lot better when it's something that like you've already seen a lot of.
Oh, yes.
But if you're bringing something back like this, you want to make sure not only is the juice worth the squeeze, but like that you really do need to prove to people like why should I care about this? Why does this matter?
Yes,
It's an
because that's
interesting
always been a
story.
problem of Captain Planet that's been difficult for him to get attached to young readers is that unfortunately because of what his purpose was and the
Yeah.
Planeteer's purpose was, they see Captain Planet as sort of just an allegory to uh essentially try and I don't want to cure is not the right word, but basically better take care of climate control. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot more nuance to the character and to the Planeteers than just that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
I think it comes down to a few things.
yeah,
One of them is how do you make the Planeteers feel like characters with agency and make them interesting and individually
right.
compelling. Um, because it's very easy to just be like, here's Captain Planet and his sidekick, and
Yes.
and and I think that's an easy thing to kind of be turned off by.
Oh
Whereas
yes.
I think this is the Planeteer story.
Yes.
It really is driven by them and
Yeah.
and leaning into their powers, their individual power rings, and like what can they do as individuals in interesting and dynamic ways. There's and I think also there's a way of how do you take this message of environmentalism and collective action and combating greed, and how do you simplify that? How do you make that feel a little bit more immediate, a little bit more emotionally driven, a little bit more personal?
Right.
And that's something that we really kind of tap into a lot in this book is it's you know um, these characters each have different roots in the greater environmental conversation,
Yes.
but also just like Wheeler's whole arc is like, why does any of this matter? Why is this up to us?
Yes.
And I think
Exactly.
that's kind of a meta question of that any reader would have is why should I care about this? So yeah, I think and I think it's just also like I think really kind of making this feel rooted in the world outside your window. Like this is, I'd say it's a grounded but ultimately still very hopeful and optimistic
Yes.
take. That it does have some elements of the superhero genre with Captain Planet himself, but these characters, the Planeteers, they're not superheroes. They don't have
No.
costumes. They don't have code names. They're ordinary people just like you and me who've just been granted extraordinary power. Um and I think people are seeing like, oh, like this feels timely. People do want political content. People want
Yes.
content that kind of speaks to today's moment. And I've been working on this since prior to the election, but it was certainly on my mind of this could be very timely in a not great way,
Oh no, yes,
but in an
no.
important way. So yeah, I think the response has been so overwhelming. I think people are kind of like, oh, you're doing Captain Planet in 2025, and yeah, I am. I'm excited for people to see what it's like.
I am too. Especially because again, this is a new interpretation, but it's respecting the past and
Yeah,
at the same time, I do love how it looks. Like you talk everyone's been asking you about why does Captain Planet have a beard, and you've done such a great job of explaining that because
yeah,
I feel like Captain Planet is definitely one of those characters that you should not be afraid to reimagine, but at the same
yeah.
time still show the roots of where this character came from.
Yeah, it's Captain Planet. I think a redesign was warranted. The mullet and the crop top very much rooted that character and concept in 1990,
Yes.
and so doing a redesign that is sort of us planting our flag design wise, I think was necessary, and giving him pants, giving him a full shirt. The beard was Amon Casalos's idea, but we
Really?
all kind of glommed onto it because not only is it a bold design choice, but it speaks to this kind of fatherly mentor figure that
Yes, because
Captain Planet
a
is.
lot of people jumped the gun and assumed that this was going to be a more grittier take, but
Yeah,
immediately, yeah,
that's not the case.
yeah.
Dark Gritty Captain Planet. I'm sure somebody wants to write that, but it's not me.
No, and
I
I
think
don't think
that's
it should happen.
I think it's antithetical to the character. To me, he's Superman with metamorphosed powers.
Yes,
He's
exactly.
heroic. He's got that reassuring kind of aura to him.
Just the
You
way
know,
he
it,
speaks, it's
yeah,
very. It does. It feels like a weight is being lifted off your shoulders as soon as he speaks.
yeah. So yeah, I think people are gonna see like, oh, this is kind of like a hopeful take, but one that doesn't shy away from like I think some of the issues that we're facing today.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's been a big responsibility, and it certainly has inspired me to kind of bring my absolute A game to it.
Absolutely. Well, I do hope, since it is going to be a 5 issue miniseries, five
Six.
issues, oh, 6 issues. So since it's going to be a 6 issue miniseries, I hope that that means that there is room to expand. And I know you've been saying
Sure.
never say never, but definitely I would love to see. I think we would all love to see like what would the classic Planet villains be like in in your writing style
Yeah,
because
you'll get to see, Loot and Plunder, Duke Nukem, Dr. Blight, a
yes.
few others that we're kind of holding close to the vest.
Okay.
But
Any teases or okay, so this is probably a question you're probably going to shoot down immediately, but any chance of Captain Pollution in the future? Like
I mean,
if
there's always a chance,
yeah.
but you'll have to read the book to find out.
Okay, sounds good. Well, definitely the last thing that is coming up in May, and this is the one we were both excited. I was excited to talk to you about because this is a character that has a lot of resonancy with me, and that's Speed Racer.
Mhm.
So as of this moment, we're almost a month away from Speed Racer. Has there been any updates that you can share with us today of how that's going?
It's going great. Yeah, Free Comic Book Day issue looks amazing. David Tinto's drawing issue one right now. After that, I'm writing issue two. So it's still early on in our run, but I've planned this thing out literally in an issue to issue, page to page basis. I'm going to be on it through at least issue 15, so we got a good long runway for it. And
That's good.
yeah, it's Rocky in a race car. It's brand new continuity, but we'll introduce all the classic villains and supporting characters. It's if you like my Space Ghost run, you're gonna really love this book. But yeah, it's 15 issues of car chases. I couldn't turn it down.
That's amazing, and that's got to be that's the longest. Like, was that always in the was that a part of the initial pitch to Mad Cave that you could do this in 15 issues, or
Yeah, they asked me. They said that they when they offered me the book, they said we'd have a 15 issue runway, and then we actually extended more with the Free Comic Book Day run. Or
okay,
so so it's 16 chapters total. But yeah, I think between that, we'll see. Either that or Space Ghost will wind up being my longest. But yeah, it's different from my other work, because
yeah,
these are flesh and blood characters. They don't have powers. The cars are elevated, but
yes,
I think it's nice. It kind of reinforces like you got to do the human side of things and the human
yes,
drama of it all. And I think powers can sometimes be a crutch, and so
absolutely, yes.
being able to kind of lean into that human nature of it all, the drama and the character dynamics. It's been a really fun book that I think has really kind of strengthened some muscle groups that I've been looking to strengthen for a while.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so again, I don't mind teases, but any chance of the Mach 6 showing up? Because I know everyone's excited to see the Mach 5. I love the Mach 5. I think everybody on this planet loves the Mach 5, but thanks to the 2008 movie, in my opinion, the Mach 6 was just as good of a car, but I feel like that's kind of always been overshadowed.
Yeah,
Um,
well, so legally speaking, we can't use anything from the movie because
that
that's a
makes sense.
set of rights. But yeah, the Mach 5 is gonna, I see it as very much a character of its own.
Yeah,
Uh, and so we're gonna be sticking with the Mach 5, but it's not to say that there isn't room for potential upgrades
there
down
you
the line.
go. Okay. Well, like you said, it's Rocky meets Fast and the Furious, and the best part about the Mach 5 is that there's always improvements to be made, so that
Yeah,
is good. I like that. Um, well, real quick before I let you go,
sure.
just is there any would you like to talk about you recently came out and mentioned you're doing another book. Would you care to talk about that?
Yeah, 10-ton Titan Terrier. It's coming out in October from Mad Cave's Paper Cuts Imprint. It's Pokemon meets the Iron Giant. It's
Oh
about
my god, that's amazing.
it's a meteor crashes into Earth and it's got a bunch of kaiju eggs in it, but an alien battle suit as well. And the only creature on Earth that can turn the suit on to fight these kaiju is an 11-inch tall terrier.
Oh,
So it's like Ash and Pikachu if Pikachu could pilot the Iron Giant instead of
that's
lightning.
amazing.
So yeah, I'm working with artist Ornella Greco. I'm really thrilled with that book. I'm so happy Paper Cuts has given it a home. We've been
Yes.
working on this book since 2019, so
Oh
it's been a
my
long
goodness.
time
Well,
coming. Um,
congratulations on bringing it home.
yeah, I was just tired of not having anything I could sell to children. So if you're watching The Incredibles or Avatar: The Last Airbender or Dragon Ball Z or any of the like Toy Stories or anything like that, you're in good company with Terrier tonally. But yeah, I think it's the missing food group. And so I'm very excited for people to get to read this one. It's my first standalone graphic novel. Um,
Congrats.
but yeah, it's like an age appropriate Pacific Rim.
Okay, that's amazing. Well, I definitely want to thank you for being on here and talking. I do want to encourage everyone to please go read your stuff, your Cable run, your Moon Knight run, which you talked about the last time,
Yeah,
your Space Ghost run. Please go pre-order Captain Planet. Like, please buy everything this man writes. Like,
please do.
it's amazing, and no exaggeration. It literally makes me get through the depression days where it's like I have something to look forward to
Oh, I'm so
and be
glad.
excited about. Yes, because it doesn't
Thank you
make
for
me
reading.
thank you for writing. It's fantastic. And also to you guys, you can go and actually buy his Space Ghost Volume 1. It's on trade and paperback, and it's on hardcover, and or just go buy all of the issues, like, because I love collecting single issues, so definitely do that as well.
Yeah,
But thank you so much, David, for being on. I'm looking forward to having you back on to mainly talk about Captain Planet and Speed
sure.
Racer whenever they're out. And
Definitely.
if you guys enjoyed seeing David on, again, please go follow him on every social media, go buy his stuff. And until then, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you again, David, for being on.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Any custom intro you want to shout? Like, do you have any words of inspiration for anyone?
Oh, right out of order, right? Whatever's easiest. Dessert first.
All right. Well, until then, this is Saber King saying Geronimo. Bye, everybody.